Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, January 16th, 2018 City Council Finance Committee meeting. Committee members present, myself, Councilor Di Natale, Councilors Walsh and Zarella. Councilor Boschman did contact me yesterday and to tell me he will not be able to make the committee meeting because due to illness. Also, councilors present this evening, Squalia, Clark, and Caddy. I will just remind committee members, new committee members, and new councilors that this is a committee meeting, which means, per the open meeting law, any councilors present at this meeting who are not on the committee are not allowed to voice an opinion, for or against any order before the committee. They are allowed to ask questions, make comments, but they're not allowed to give a position on this, for non-committee members only. I will start the meeting first by asking if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak before this committee this evening, outside of city employees or department heads that already are going to be speaking on one of the two agenda items before us. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak at this hearing? Yes.
Hi, thank you. I'm Jean LaBelle Pierce. I live at 264 Tibbet Circle. I serve on the school committee in Fitchburg, and I just wanted to speak in favor of beginning this process and moving this process forward of the feasibility study for Crocker and hopefully moving on to renovations that will solve a lot of the issues for Longjo and Crocker. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening. My name is Adam Renda. I'm the principal of Crocker Elementary School. I am also a resident of Fitchburg. I'm speaking tonight to urge the council to approve the feasibility study for the possible repair, renovation, or rebuilding of Crocker Elementary School. As you know, we have been recently displaced onto two campuses, one at TC Passio's in Lunenburg, the other at St. Anthony's on Salem Street in Fitchburg. Though this has been a fairly smooth transition, it is a rather large disruption to the education of the students at the school. And before this happened, the school was in major need of a renovation. I just wanted you to hear it from someone who works in the school for the past 10 years and knows it inside and out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wishing to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to the agenda. Also present, committee member, Council President Kuchmarek has arrived. Councilors, I'm going to skip over 00518 and first start with 00618. In order, whereas it is the opinion of the City Council in Resolution 29617 to support the continuation of the landfill, and whereas the City through the Health Department, Law Department, and the Mayor's Office have met with Waste Management, vetted and negotiated the enclosed Memorandum of Understanding and its exhibits and attachments, now therefore it is ordered that the Honorable Stephen L. Di Natale execute and deliver any and all documents necessary, convenient, and helpful to facilitate the intent of the Council's approval of Resolution 29617, including but not limited to the execution of agreements in a form substantially similar to that which is attached. City Solicitor Pusateri.
Thank you, Councilor Di Natale. Councilors, this is a order for, I think, what is an obvious need. It's a continuation of the landfill. We've been very fortunate to work with a great team from Waste Management. Has been generously negotiating a continuation of our host agreement. Currently, councilors, over the last 3 years, cities received $5.6 million in payments from Waste Management through the host agreement fees. We anticipate the execution of this contract will increase those fees, getting closer towards $3 million. The obvious need for the continuation of the landfill and the benefits that we have to have that in our area cannot be overstated. The continuation of this site for most likely at least 10 years is going to put us in a great financial position to avoid otherwise a tremendous cost moving forward. And I'm asking for your consideration to support the order.
Questions from members?
We have the team here. If there's any questions at all, we're here.
Councilor Zarella.
just to confirm my understanding, this will actually increase rather than decrease the total amount of conservation land once the swap is executed, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you.
Counselor Squalia.
Are you saying it's going to extend the total life expectancy of the landfill an additional 10 years from the current 7 years, so from 2025 approximately to 2035?
It's going to go from 2024 to 2034. And there's no absolute promise in this agreement that it will be 10 years, but the folks from Waste Management's projections seem to indicate will be 10 years. There's also a provision in the contract that as they get close to capacity at the landfill, they're going to notify us, and it's going to provide us an opportunity to control the amount of solid waste that they're accepting from ours and other communities, and hopefully to allow us to extend the life even slightly further to give us a chance to make some other arrangement.
At what point is the notification? Like 80%?
When they believe it's 365 days to capacity.
1 year?
Yep. So at the rate of the then consumption. So the belief that we have in the number is it will be more than a year. So for example, if they're accepting 1,500 tons per day of solid waste, we will then be able to request that they reduce that amount to a different amount. I think to 500? Was it down to 500? Down to significantly less amount, and that'll allow us to have even more than that last year. Unless we already have another arrangement, because that we may want the host fee at that point in time too. Because we will forego a greater host fee if we decrease the solid waste that the landfill is receiving. Okay?
Okay, just again.
Counselor Caddy.
When you decrease the solid waste, if we did that starting tomorrow, you're also decreasing our revenue.
Correct.
So we just have to play the balance with this.
Absolutely. And if we were to try to decrease the solid waste with Waste Management, they're obviously a for-profit company, and I too do expect that they're going to make a profit here. But at the same time, if they're not going to make a profit here, they are risking quite a bit on the upfront side of this project. A tremendous amount of permitting, this work in the legislature that has to happen in order to get aspects of this project approved. There's a tremendous amount of capital that they'll be investing in land in the area. So to a certain degree, it has to be a profitable venture for them to even want to take that type of risk.
But with your projections, we're good till 2034.
2034, sir.
Thank you.
And we have the hope that come 2030, we're going to look at the area again and try to determine, yet, is it viable for another expansion? I mean, that's been something that we've already contemplated how that would look. So not only are we working on this particular step, we're looking at what the next step is going to be.
For the public's edification, we collect how much right now in revenue?
2016, we collected 2.75 million.
2.75 million. So through this 2034 period, are we getting increases in revenue annually? Or
Yes.
or every, what would that, what are we projecting the revenue will be beyond the 2016 figure?
I'm projecting that in the immediate near future, you'll be towards 3 million a year.
3 million,
Yeah.
immediate future. What about after that?
I can't project that. We have an escalation rate tied to the CPU for, of all things, clerical wages, which has been another aspect of our conversation. And it's impossible for us to see how that index may increase or decrease over time.
I only ask because I hope that our revenues will increase every year or every other year in proportion to what Waste Management is pulling in for revenue on their end. Because, they need this expansion as much as we do. And I just want to make sure that there is an imbalance in what they're taking in on their end, and yet our revenues will be stagnant or only going up by a smaller percentage. So I want to make sure the citizens of the city and our government gets the right amount of revenue in proportion to how Waste Management is doing, because as we've heard previous weeks, you know, this landfill is a gold mine for a lot of areas because they're dying out. And so we have a gem in this city that we don't want to let go of, and neither do they. So I just want to make sure we're maximizing our revenue potential to the fullest extent during this agreement.
And we are working on that, sir. We do not have a final dollar figure for that host agreement. It was a substantial portion of our last conference call with Waste Management, with Mr. Curry and I participated in. And we are mindful that this is the opportunity now for us to make that arrangement.
So this order before us tonight is purely based on the expansion. Will there be an additional meeting or a separate meeting down the road when we negotiate different amended terms of our contract in terms of rates, tonnage, revenue? Are we going to see something like that down the road?
No, you're gonna see, that's what you have in front of you tonight. This is the balance of the petition that's been approved. And if you're looking at the most recent reiteration of the host agreement, you're looking at an increase currently of that dollar amount. What's happened recently is, as we've been working with DCR is also looking to participate in Waste Management's profits, if you will, and be paid for certain land that's in that area. So it's really talking about how we're dividing up the pie, not only with Waste Management, but with the other people that are involved in this transaction.
Well, the most important thing to take from this is that we're getting another potentially 10 more years beyond the capacity we're currently running at, which is at least $3 million of annual revenue, which obviously I think everyone in this room and outside of this room would agree, losing that would be devastating.
Sure. Other benefits that we have, we are bringing sludge, which is a byproduct of our wastewater system there, substantially free, for the most part. There are some small costs once we hit a certain tonnage. We are having reduced disposal rates for our citizens that are dumping their trash there. And there's other additional collateral benefits to the agreement.
Council President Kuchmarek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Solicitor, I've had several questions from residents, and this dates back to several months ago, just about questions about management in terms of being able to maximize the use for Fitchburg residents and their ability to use the landfill on the weekends. And I was trying to assure them during this process that while the contract, largely sets in place the financial parameters, this will still provide us as a city the opportunity to talk about, if we wanted to set up, exclusive hours for residents, we'd still have that opportunity after this contract process is complete. Would we not, still have some discretion in terms of working with Waste Management?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a separate part of the contract that refers to the operation of the rules of operating the landfill, and that gives us a lot of flexibility to work with our friends here at Waste Management to make sure we continue to have access to that. I think which we currently do.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I have one additional question. When Mr. Curry was here weeks ago, there was a statement made about DEP and a 2020 date of when they want to basically eradicate landfills. How does this agreement counter to that? I mean, is the state realizing you can't eradicate landfills in the next 2 years? And how does that impact this agreement if they woke up one day and said, you know what, we're getting rid of the landfills?
Well, I think, I'm just going to take my cue from the mayor. He's responded earlier. We met with Governor Baker, had an opportunity to spend a few minutes with him, and one of the issues that he was aware of was this landfill. And he is looking forward to being a participant in the continuation of the landfill. DCR has been involved. Those are the folks that are looking for a little bit more money. They see this as an opportunity to drive a little bit of revenue and increase conservation. So we have partners with DCR as well. I don't think DEP is going to get involved in the way of that. But anything can happen. There's a MEPA process that we are lucky enough to have Waste Management take full control over and allow them to, navigate that very complicated process for us. So that's where it's going to come down.
I hope
as to what
DEP
those
stays
conditions-
away for a very long time.
Say that again?
I hope DEP stays away for a very long time.
I hope they protect the environment.
Big fans of them, yeah. Any other questions? Counselor Squalia.
The increase in conservation land, can you explain more how we are increasing the conservation land?
Sure. There are various parcels that are right around that area that we might be able to, well, that we're working on taking title to. One of them is, that you're familiar with because you drive by it, is the Sawmill Pond and the surrounding land around that. But there are also some other areas and opportunities there.
Those are land owned by the city of Fitchburg?
Not yet, but it's in, that particular parcel's in tax title, and we've been keeping that on a very close watch to make sure we get that through the process as quickly as possible. We're going to, there are other land acquisitions that Waste Management's working on, and there's other acquisitions that I think is gonna pass through the town of Westminster. So those are many irons in the fire in that regard. We've also looked through the city of Fitchburg, because we have conservation goals in the city of Fitchburg. For example, in the northern part of the city, although not as attractive to DCR, we have a lot of water resources up there, and we're looking to see how we can include those land interests in providing for further conservation, not only of our water resources, but of letting DCR feel like they're getting something out of the deal there as well. So all of those things are currently being considered. We do believe we clearly can provide a 2-for-1 on acreage for increased conservation. And we're optimistic that we may even be able to sweeten up that deal a little bit.
Is there any future stipulation for use of the landfill after 2034, after it's capped?
There
this
is some
contract?
provisions in the contract about that. Those are actually fairly dynamic. The current thinking would be to have some type of passive use up there. The property is owned, well, the property that we're talking about is gonna be property that's in Westminster. The property that is in Fitchburg, that's owned by Fitchburg, is that all? The property owned by Fitchburg is in Westminster.
It's in Westminster.
It's in Westminster as well. So, the general thinking is solar farm. There could be some other passive recreational activity up there. But again, what we're really thinking about is once we start approaching 2034, maybe in 2030, we find another opportunity to make another land swap and use a little bit more to keep the operation, if it's still needed. There may be a brand-new technology at the time that disposes of waste for us, and we may not need to do this anymore.
Motion to approve 00618.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded to approve 00618. Committee members only. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, 00518. In order that $1 million be appropriated for the purpose of paying costs of feasibility study on Crocker Elementary School, 200 Bigelow Drive, Fitchburg, Mass. For K-4 or K-8 project as outlined in the order. Superintendent Ravenel and Assistant Superintendent Jokel.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here tonight, and thank you for looking at this and putting it on the agenda. As you know, we've been working for quite a while, trying to identify an opportunity to go to MSBA for another school in Fitchburg. We began the process quite a while ago. Since then, we've gone back and revisited it and expanded the scope of this study to look at not only a K-4, but also possibly a K-8. When we met in Boston, a group of us with MSBA, and at the time, they were not only open to, but very much encouraging looking at a variety of options as you go out and start to see what are the needs of the city and what are the needs of your population. They had done a pretty extensive enrollment projection. We had our own enrollment projection. When we met with them, we compared the numbers, and we felt that our numbers were a little bit heavier than theirs in terms of the growth that we were going to see here in Fitchburg. They were not counting in some of the most recent development, the housing projects at the two mills. So we brought that to their attention, and by the end of the conversation, it was clear to everyone there that we should go forward and do a study, but leave it open to look at a couple of different possibilities. So that's where we're at right now, and that's what this $1 million would do. It would be able to allow us to go out and do all of the work in preparation to see what would be the best approach for the city of Fitchburg.
So my first question, gentlemen, is when do we believe this study will be concluded? Do you have any idea when we think we'll have the study?
You've been
Well,
looking
I
at the
guess-
timelines more than I have.
Yeah, the feasibility study from, from, I guess, approval by city council to a schematic design is a 2.5-year process.
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
And when do we anticipate MSBA actually, after those 2.5 years, when they receive the report, we all receive it, how long after that time would the process of actual action on that study take place? I guess my question is, MSBA, we talked 5 or 7 years out. I mean, is this project, if it ever sees the light of day, when do we anticipate that that might actually start? What would be the year we would think construction would begin or any action would begin after that 2.5 years of the study being done? Another 2 years after that, or 3?
Probably about maybe a year or so after
Yeah.
that. The whole timeline from, let's say, now to completion of the process is 5 years.
Okay. And the K through 8, so the K through 4, this is probably a question for Mr. Brooks. On the loan spreadsheet we were given for our discussions last week, the projection was $60 million for Crocker, 12 million being the 20% share on the city side. Is that assuming a K through 4?
I believe it is.
Originally, yeah, and I
Originally,
think,
K through 4.
yeah, and I think, and not to speak on Cal's behalf, but I think that number was kind of a placeholder without any firm projection of any specific project. So, so that number's been, I think, just carried on throughout this process.
And so is it conceivable to believe that if we went through a K through 8, that would be double that number?
No.
No. That was actually some questions that residents have posed to me. is
Yeah.
If the 60 million assumes an elementary school, would a middle school as well add astronomical cost on top of that? Or is
Well,
the 60 million for whatever we decide to do as a placeholder?
Right. So I guess, you know, as, you know, and Mr. Brooks and the mayor came in, the most recent meeting at MSBA, and really what the feasibility study for any project that any community undertakes is to look at, you know, repair, rebuild, replace. You know, and as the superintendent stated early on, I think it's now 9 years ago, Crocker was originally approved to be in the core program by MSBA. But when the stimulus money came available with the prior administration and Mr. Brooks' predecessor, we went in and met with MSBA officials, and we said we have a lot more pressing immediate needs with boilers and roofs. And at that time, Crocker, we felt we could get a little bit more time out of it. So we made a decision to pursue as many green repair projects as possible. And again, all with 80% MSBA reimbursement. So now we've kind of come full circle to visit this core program, and I guess looking at, you know, what the needs of the students are, you know, looking at what's best educationally. I think just last week Boston announced that they're looking at going K through 8 themselves. So, you know, this is an opportunity to look at, you know, educational programming, the needs of our students, all of that. So
this $1 million, this would be 80% reimbursable, correct? Okay, so the max the city would incur is about 200,000. My final question is probably for Mr. Brooks again, but whomever can answer it. The 60 million estimation, was that based on anything? Because my concern is, what if the feasibility sum comes back and it's more than that? I mean, what do we base 60 million on?
That came out of who did the study? Lamo Pagano?
yeah, well, Lamar Pagano, right, a couple of years ago.
Came out of that.
Okay, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
They had a few options, so, you know, it's,
So we feel comfortable with the $60 million number, in terms of an estimate, based on data we've received?
Yes.
it's an estimate, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's an estimate. It could, it's a
Starting
starting point, yeah.
Okay. Counselor Caddy?
That's my question is in the same term. So if the study is 2 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an estimate of 60 million, and we're 5 years out, that's a spread of 7 years. It seems to me prices will increase over 7 years from your 60
Right.
million figure.
That's possible.
And that happens to every district that's looking at a project like this, you know, during the time, and there was clearly a time about 8 years ago where just the opposite happened. We were able to do much more work in the green program than we thought we could because the cost of labor went way down. So again, it's an estimate. The MSBA has a number of schools that they've built recently, so these estimates are based on looking at what's been built out there and what's been the cost. So it really is a placeholder, but it's not a placeholder that's way off from what would be expected. And there's the scope of, is it an addition? Is it a new an addition, or is it a new? So just the nature of what the feasibility study is going to be looking at could be anywhere from just a renovation and addition to a brand-new school.
Thank you.
Counselor Zarella.
So, understanding that obviously any hard numbers have to wait on the feasibility study, and that 60 million is a ballpark figure, just in general increments, about what sort of scale of cost difference are we talking about from K through 4 to K through 8? Are we talking? I mean, we said we're not talking double. Are we talking, say, a 20% increase, 50% increase?
I'll answer that. I guess to be clear, the question was, is it double 60 million?
Mm-hmm.
No. Okay, we've spoken with MSBA about that. Is it, you know, it could be, so looking at based on my analysis of what, let's say, K through 4 schools are going at, there was a school recently completed in Worcester, the Nelson Place, that was about 45 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you know, K through 8 could be, you know, 80, 90, thereabouts. I'm just, you know, throwing out numbers, double that number, not double
Okay.
60.
I see.
Okay. But again, until we go through the process, and as the superintendent said, you know, 5 or 6 years from now, or even 4 years from now, when we start looking at construction, we could be in a recession, and the construction prices could drop 40% like they did 8 years ago. So we don't know.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, it's also related to the population of the school and the difference between building an elementary school. So if you say is it 650 elementary students K through 4, or is it 650 students K through 8? So you start with, is the number the same? And then the difference between a K through 4 and a K through 8 is marginal, because basically all you'd be adding to that are going to be science labs. Because the 5 through 8 is still a homeroom, as opposed to if you were talking about an elementary school and a high school, you're talking a real big difference. The piece that's hard to target is the changing population, because if we're starting now and we don't start construction, I'm looking at, it's the elementary schools right now that are packed. I've got a lot of kids in elementary. 4 years from now, they're going to be in middle school. So you're trying to work with a shifting population, a shifting wage arrangement, and then a shifting cost of materials. There were times when steel was cheap. There were times when steel was very expensive. So that could put a big difference in terms of construction costs.
Okay, thank you.
Bottom line is, this feasibility study is going to actually provide us, like the Lamero and Pagano study for City Hall, our array of options and cost estimations, and then we'll know better at that time in 2 or 3 years what this truly will cost.
Yeah.
Right now, we have a $60 million placeholder. There may be some flexibility in that number, but again, there's going to be a whole array of options, 3, 4, 5 options, let's say. So I think it's a little premature right now to discuss what the cost will be. I just wanted to understand the background of the estimation.
Yeah.
Councilor Boschman.
I think I asked this question before, I'm gonna ask it again. I understand you have to wait for the feasibility study and that, but according to your report that you gave all of us, this council, it's saying that from that, I don't know who the guy was that did it, that schools were in poor condition, like, they recommended add-on over here at Memorial, they recommend South Street, tear down the old part and put an addition on. They recommend Crocker Elementary School to be replaced, Rango to be fixed up better than what it is. How are we gonna afford all of this? Really, South Street, you know, you're looking for a K-8. We're hoping that maybe we won't invest a lot of money into Longo, so we can take those students out of there and probably bring them partly up to Crocker and probably over here. So that means you have to put an addition on here.
Let me answer that. 'Cause- So,
I'm going by that, what I read on what you said to me.
right. So there's a couple different things, okay? So first of all, Lermo Pagano, when they prepared their strategic facilities plan 2 years ago, it had 3 options. One was fix all the schools, okay? And that was what, 150, 175
I think it was
million?
175 million.
Yeah, okay. So being realistic, we know that that's not possible, right? So another option was looking at, you know, a small addition here at Memorial, a small addition at Crocker, you know. But again, you know, does that accomplish the goals that we're looking for? A third option was expanding Crocker, making it a K through 8, and tearing down the north wing at South Street and replacing it with a little larger wing so that could accommodate a K through 8. Okay, so those are just ideas. So in a way, this feasibility study takes that idea. It's a collateral document now. The MSBA and whoever is awarded the design contract has basically some homework that's done for them. Okay, but they're going to start their whole homework process all over again. Okay, and really be focused on Crocker. Lermo Pagano study was much more comprehensive, and they had designers, not just let me be clear, system subs people. So whether it's your HVAC, your electrical, they had experts come in and look at here. Okay, the fact that we have a new roof and new windows and new boiler doesn't negate the fact that we still have 60-year-old pipes running through this building, or 60-year-old electrical running through this building. So that's still the same. So that's why, you know, our schools received poor ratings, because that's the infrastructure that is there. And, you know, we still face challenges with some of that infrastructure, whether it's here or at other schools. So that report, again, is a set of options. That report was given to MSBA when it was completed 2 years ago. They have that. But again, we're starting from square one. We're going to have a owner's project manager assigned to this and an architect to guide us through the next 2.5 years.
All right. Good.
Counselor Walsh.
Yeah, I just have a question for clarification. You said it's a 5-year process from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. The end of the process is what? Is
The
that?
end of the process would be a completed building.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to approve 00518.
Second?
Motion has been made and approved to accept 00518. Any questions from committee members on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you very much, councilors.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.